Right, so now UFC 257, Poirier versus McGregor 2 is in the rearview mirror. It's time to move forward because after all, we can't just dwell on the main and co-main event. There was an entire UFC 257 card that took place around it as well. So I thought I'd go through that entire card and matchmake absolutely everyone on the card, because I'll tell you this, there were some prospects that gained a lot more momentum and added to their win streaks. There was some shock upsets on the card as well. Some great performances from certain prospects and great talent shown throughout. I thought we'd go through every one of them, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my matchup to be made for the winner and the loser of every single bout, starting with the early prelim opener, which was Amir Al-Basi versus Zalgasa Magulov. Great fight while it lasted. Amir Al-Basi showed how good he was and showed that he's ready for the top level of the UFC, because Zalgasa Magulov might be better than some of the top guys, because Raulian Paver's nearly top 10 and Zalgasa Magulov, in my opinion, beat him. So in my opinion, Amir Al-Basi should get a jump up those rankings. I think he should do it against Tyson Nam. I wanted to match him against like a David Dvorak or a Raulian Paver or a Tagir Ulanbekov, but I think it's about time we really try and shed the fat of the flyweight division and get rid of a name like Tyson Nam, in my opinion. Amir Al-Basi versus Tyson Nam makes sense. Tyson Nam is ranked in the flyweight division. It would give Amir Al-Basi a nice jump up. I think both of them need some time off right now. They both went to decisions and tough ones. Take 4 months off. Come back on a good position on a card sometime, like a fight night prelim co-main event, second on the prelims from the top, that is, rather than the beginning like he has been the past few fights. I think it's time to give Al-Bazi a little bit of a spotlight in that second slot down on the prelims, and if he wins that one against Tyson Nam, then we can shimmy him over to the main card against one of these other prospects and really start building the flyweight division once we got rid of all of the older guys that we need to get rid of right now in the flyweight division. Nam should not be around, and I think it's time to get rid of him with Amir Al-Basi. Moving on, Zalgasa Magulov lost that bout. I think we should keep him on. I like Zalgasa Magulov. He's very good. He always makes it competitive. He has a win over Tagir Ulanbekov, so if we can keep him winning and then have Tagir Ulanbekov beat him and perfect his legacy, that would be ideal, and I think that's what the plan should be for Magulov. Give him a fight with Cody Durden, who lost to Jimmy Flick not too long ago, but looked good before the flying triangle occurred because he was winning that fight quite comfortably. Loser goes home. Zalgasa Magulov versus Cody Durden is the fight to make in the flyweight division right now, in my opinion, as well. Moving on to the next fight on the early prelims, Movsar Eveloev versus Cub Swanson is the fight I want to see made next after Eveloev and Lentz went to a scrappy decision. I know it was a split decision, but in my opinion, Eveloev clearly won the second and third round. The first round is up for debate for Nick Lentz winning, I understand, but 29-28 across the board should have been the scorecard because Eveloev just pieced him up in the second and third, in my opinion, and I think he should take on Cub Swanson next because it's a perfect matchup. You want to have this big name fight for Movsar Eveloev right now, and you also want a name that's going to carry Movsar Eveloev to a great position on the card, because I'll tell you this, Cub Swanson versus Movsar Eveloev could headline the prelims of a bad or a good pay-per-view, or a bad pay-per-view, who knows. That's a great positional fight on the card. You can use Cub Swanson's name to get Eveloev up the card, maybe in a co-main event of a fight night with a great main event, or a feature fight of a fight night main card with a great co-main and main as well. That will carry Eveloev up the card rather than being on the early prelims of all of these cards, which he shouldn't be, in my opinion, and also getting that big win and maybe even put him at number 15 in those rankings with a win over Cub Swanson. I don't think he's ready for the jump up yet. He's only 26 years of age. He made the Lentz fight a little bit close in that first round, which is never good to see because Lentz really should not be winning fights at this point in his career. But again, Lentz made it close against Arnold Allen as well, but lost every round. But still, Movsar Eveloev versus Cub Swanson is what I want to see next, because also, if you're Cub Swanson, you just watch what Nick Lentz did to Movsar Eveloev in the first round. I feel like Cub Swanson might like his chances in that bout, so I think that should be made next. Swanson versus Eveloev, prelims of a pay-per-view or a main card of a fight night. Give him a spotlight. That's a great fight to be made, and Nick Lentz was the loser of his bout with Eveloev. I think he should take on Damon Jackson. Loser goes home, winner stays on and takes on another contender for us, but that's the fight that should be made next. Lentz versus Jackson, Eveloev Swanson. Moving on to the prelims, Khalil Roundtree suffered a loss to Marcin Prachnio by decision, and people said robbery, but I say clear decision win for rounds 1 and 3 went to Marcin Prachnio. Round 2 could have went to Khalil Roundtree, but he did nothing after rocking Prachnio whatsoever. He was so patient and did absolutely nothing to win himself that fight, so you can't blame the decision for going the other way. Khalil Roundtree, I think should take on Klidson Farias Diabriu, unless he's going to retire, because it seemed like in the middle of the fight he kind of retired in that third round, I'll be honest with you. So I think they should do Roundtree Jr. versus Klidson Farias Diabriu, and Marcin Prachnio against Da Un Jung, who's coming off a draw to Sal Malvi, so you're not going to give him a jump up, but give him this matchup with Marcin Prachnio. Make it happen. They're both on the same side of the world, in the Eastern Hemisphere anyway, is where they're originally from. So let's make that fight happen. I think it'd be a good one, an entertaining one, of course. Prachnio shows that he's pretty good, and actually a win over him for Da Un Jung would be pretty nice. Plus, I think Da Un Jung would beat Marcin Prachnio, so it's a good name to build him as well. Make those fights happen. Roundtree versus Farias. Loser goes to Bellator or retires forever, because I don't think we can see Roundtree lose again after that one. Moving on. Up the card on the prelims, Sarah McMahon fought Juliana Pena, and Pena got a one-armed rear naked choke in the third round and called out Amanda Nunes and said she was ducking her. I would love to match up Pena with Nunes, just to show why Nunes is definitely not ducking her, because Pena, you've lost every single title elimination bout in your entire career. Why are you talking? But I think that Juliana Pena should take on Raquel Pennington, above her in the rankings. I believe top 3 right now in the women's division. I'll check immediately as I say that in the bantamweight division. She's number 4. Juliana Pena's number 7. She might move to number 6. So let's make that one right there. Raquel Pennington versus Juliana Pena. Winner of that one fights in a title elimination bout for a title shot. Just how it works at women's bantamweight. You don't need too many wins to get a title on your hands. So I like Juliana Pena versus Raquel Pennington, and the loser of that bout, Sarah McMahon, I believe should take on Irene Aldana as well in those rankings, who's going to slip down. Maybe Pena's going to move above Irene Aldana just because Aldana lost her previous fight. That's what we could do next. I think Juliana Pena versus Pennington and Irene Aldana versus Sarah McMahon makes sense as matchups 100%. Let's do them next. Moving on to some of the good ones though, and this is where things get really interesting. It's time to make a jump up in the middleweight division. Tavares has got himself a win, and you know what that means. Brad Tavares, coming off of a win. It's time to feed him to a prospect. That's what every single time, that's what happens every single time Tavares gets a win at middleweight. Here's the prospect that's going to steamroll you, and we'll see what happens. It was Shabazian, it was Whitaker, it was Adesanya. Now I believe it's going to be Makhmud Muradov, who also fought on the card, on the main card of 257. A massive name, another star that you can build. Coming into his prime, he's still got time to go in the division, so I think it's time to make that jump up the rankings. I believe he's 3-0 now. He beat Trevor Smith, he beat Andrew Sanchez, which is a great win, a top 25 win, I believe, in that middleweight division. And he also beat one other guy that I can't quite remember right now off the top of my head. His name was Alessio De Chirico, and that win looks pretty good now that Chirico just KO'd Joaquin Buckley. So I think they should make Brad Tavares versus Makhmud Muradov. It's time to jump Muradov into those rankings, and if he wins that one, we'll start talking about another jump up after that and start getting him in the mix with the Kevin Hollands and the Darren Tills and these new wave of middleweights in the UFC, and the Marvin Vittoris, and hopefully Costa might rebound and Whitaker might still be there at the end of it. Middleweight's going to be fun without Adesanya for a bit. We've got to figure some things out. I think it's time to get Muradov in those rankings. Give it 4 months. Neither of them took too much damage in their decision wins or third round wins. They both went 3 rounds technically, even though Muradov finished it in the third. Both of them had some damage, but didn't really get concussed whatsoever. Turn them around in 4 months. Put him in the main card of a fight night or on the prelims of a pay-per-view again, and let's make it happen. Moving on up the card. Oh no, Antonio Carlos Jr. lost to Brad Tavares, and Andrew Sanchez lost to Makhmud Muradov. See this motion? From here, together. Sanchez versus Antonio Carlos Jr. makes sense, both coming off losses. I don't know if either of them are going to continue, but that's a fight that could be made afterwards, and I would like to watch it. Moving on. Up the cards at the headliner of the prelims, Arman Sarukian versus Nasrat Haqparast took place. It did not. It didn't take place. Arman Sarukian versus Matt Frevola took place, but Frevola stepped in on short notice after Haqparast had to pull out with some kind of problem when it came to the weigh-ins. I think we should rebook Arman Sarukian versus Nasrat Haqparast, because I'm not in favour of giving Arman Sarukian another jump up the rankings here, into those rankings, because he missed weight, and that does not go over my head. I really consider that a bad thing. You should not get a jump up in the rankings for missing weight. He beat Matt Frevola and looked really good. Matt Frevola is not a highly ranked guy in that lightweight division, but he's a very very dangerous one. A good win for Arman, but he's still young. I believe he's still 24 years of age. He's got time. I think they should do Arman Tsarukyan versus Nasrat Haqparast. Rebook it. They both already agreed to it anyway, so they like the matchup surely. Let's rebook them at the end of March or the start of April. Make them active, and let's build Arman Tsarukyan versus Nasrat Haqparast again, because it was a great fight. And once fights get taken away, it only builds the anticipation for when it actually happens. Both of them coming off wins. I think that's the fight to make, and the winner of that one, if it is Arman Tsarukyan, will then get a jump up into the top 15 if he makes weight, of course. Moving on, Matt Frevola lost to Arman Tsarukyan, and I think he should take on Alex White. There's no real logic behind that. I just saw Alex White coming off a loss and close to Frevola in the rankings outside the top 15, so Frevola versus Alex White. Moving on. Up the card to another one on the main card. Maureen Rodriguez versus Tisha Torres 2 should be made next. After Marina Rodriguez took on Amanda Ribas and beat her by KO finish, Torres has a TKO finish. Rodriguez now has a KO finish over Amanda Ribas, a more brutal one than Torres's, because Torres's came between the rounds. Both girls should have their rematch. I believe they fought 2 fights ago each. Let's make the rematch now. The winner of that one can get jumped up into the top 3 and try and have a chance against one of the losers of the upcoming bouts at the top of the division. Marina Rodriguez, Tisha Torres 2, make the rematch now. They're right next to each other in the rankings, both coming off wins. Now's the time to do it. That's what needs to be made, and it would get a good position on the card as well, because Torres is a big name that everyone knows because she's been around for ages. Make that fight happen. Let's get a rematch on. And also for Amanda Ribas, Angela Hill. Angela Hill, no? I think that's a great matchup to make. They're probably going to keep Angela Hill around, even though she has a terrible, terrible record, because they like Angela Hill quite a bit, it seems. So I think they should make that one. Amanda Ribas, Angela Hill, in the strawweight division. Loser goes home if it's Angela Hill. Maybe you try and rebuild Ribas again if she loses this one, but I think it's a good matchup to make. Get them both back in there in the middle of the year. She just got KO'd to give her a little bit of time off. Let's get her back in there on June, maybe on the next McGregor card if he's going to come back around that time, on the prelims maybe. Ribas versus Angela Hill. Sounds good to me. Moving on up the card, Muradov. Oh yeah, I've already matched them up. Tavares versus Muradov. Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Andrew Sanchez. Double whammy on the card. I don't even have to break this fight down between Muradov and Sanchez again. They've already got matchups. Good stuff. Moving on. Joanne Caldwell versus Viviana Araujo is what I want to see next. After a win against Jessica Eye, where she just dominated her the whole time, I want to see Jessica Eye, if she is going to fight again against Jennifer Maia in that division. They haven't fought each other next, so it's a fresh matchup. Both girls coming off losses. They're both decently well-known names. Maia gave Shevchenko a bit of a close fight by winning a round, if you can call that close, I guess. I think Jessica Eye versus Jennifer Maia would be a good one. If whoever wins would then bounce back. If Jennifer Maia wins, it's a big name in Jessica Eye. Like, as much as the MMA community hates her, they still know of her quite a bit because of all the stuff she does to make herself so unlikable. So let's make Jessica Eye versus Jennifer Maia. Make that fight. And Joanne Caldwell versus Viviana Araujo. Araujo just beat Roxanne Modafferi in a great performance, and I think it would be a great striking match between the pair of them, in a great position on the card again. Let's build up this flyweight division, because that would be a great striking match. I actually feel like Caldwell versus Araujo would be a very fun matchup, a nice little striking war between the pair of them, and I think it's great matchmaking to make an amazing product of a fight. Caldwell versus Araujo, and I versus Maia. Moving on to the co-main event. The big boys. Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira should be made next. I know I said Dustin Poirier should take on Charles Oliveira, but I don't know if I agree with my own words, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't know if Dustin Poirier should be fighting for a while. I think Dustin Poirier should tease the idea of maybe being the guy to go on and take Khabib after finishing Conor McGregor on the feet. That could be a possibility, even though I don't think Khabib's going to come back for Dustin Poirier. He is definitely the top guy, and Khabib, if he was going to take on anyone, it would be Dustin Poirier. But I think if he doesn't get the Khabib fight, he should entertain it for a while, stay in the mix, and just sit out on the sidelines for a bit while we keep the other contenders active. I want Poirier back in 6 months. He did take a lot of shots off McGregor that were quite hard and got rocked at one point as well, so give him a little bit of time, 6 months, and let's work on the rest of the division around him, because with no Khabib, we're losing a bit of structure here, and someone's going to get fucked over. So I think everyone needs to get equally fucked over to make sure that it's all fair game, if you understand what I'm saying. If you give Chandler to Poirier, then Oliveira gets fucked. If you give Oliveira to Poirier, then Chandler kind of gets fucked. It's a bit of a bad situation, but we're going to have to do this to make it all happy. Dustin Poirier sits out for 6 months. In 3 months, on a quick turnaround for Chandler, because he just won so easily against Dan Hooker, he takes on Charles Oliveira. In 3 months, on the main card of a pay-per-view, on the feature fight, Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira, the winner of that one can get a title shot against Dustin Poirier, but you also make Justin Gaethje versus Nate Diaz. The winner of that one takes on the winner of Conor McGregor versus Tony Ferguson, which is a fight that should be made next for Conor McGregor. It makes sense to most. Winner of Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson, takes on the winner of Gaethje versus Diaz. That's a massive fight to be made. And the winner of Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira jumps in there against Dustin Poirier after he has a bit of a 6-month break. We figure out everything. Both Chandler and Oliveira get half fucked over simultaneously and evenly. So no one absolutely gets destroyed while the other one gets to jump the queue. Let's make Chandler Oliveira a quick turnaround. Maybe in March on 260. 260, Miocic versus Ngannou 2, Chandler versus Oliveira on the main card in the feature fight. Take my money. That card would be done. It already has Woodley versus Luke K being added. That would be amazing. So Chandler versus Oliveira, amazing fight to make. Both, it's fair for both, in my opinion. I think it's the best thing to do. Winner of that gets Dustin Poirier. McGregor fights Tony Ferguson. Winner of that one fights the winner of Gaethje versus Nate Diaz, which I believe is going to be made next as well. And Dan Hooker, who I feel again bad for, which I feel like I say every video, in my opinion, should take on the winner of Islam Makhachev versus Drew Dober if he wants a matchup. Could just take on the up-and-coming contender. He's not going to have too much stock, and if he can beat an Islam Makhachev, the hype is right back around Dan Hooker. That's all I'll say. And Makhachev's not really the guy that's going to go out there and KO you in the first round either, so it's a great style matchup. If Makhachev gets past Drew Dober, I think Dan Hooker should be the guy that realizes this is a huge name with a huge amount of hype. If I'm the guy to volunteer my services to jump him up the rankings against me, Dan Hooker versus Islam Makhachev would be an amazing fight, an amazing matchup, and I think Dan Hooker could win as well. Makhachev could also win, and it would be a good name to get if he does win, and it would jump him up those rankings, but Dan Hooker could also get a bunch of momentum back and be right back in the mix with a win over Islam Makhachev, looking for, say, the winner of Rafael Dos Anjos versus... I don't even fucking know what's going to happen to RDA. I feel so bad for him. Maybe just... I don't even know. I don't know anymore. Let's just ignore RDA for a bit. I don't know. Sorry, RDA. But it's tough, you know. Thank you for watching the video. Like and subscribe. See you later. Those are all the matchups that need to be made. Click that button up there. Goodbye, Toodle Pippington. Moving onwards. Overeem versus Volkov. Can't wait for all of those. I know that from now on, I'm just going to point this out at the end of this video. There's been so many underdogs that now if I start picking underdogs, every favourite will win as they should. So fucking annoying, this sport. Goodbye.